Rain traced pale lines down the glass walls of Langford Estate's tower, blurring London's skyline into grey watercolour. Edward Langford, founder of the empire that bore his name, sat behind his mahogany desk, motionless. Once the city had pulsed for him, contracts, towers, handshakes. Now it only echoed. 2 years had passed since the accident on the M4, the day his wife Helen and their little boy Oliver never came home from a weekend in Cornwall. The calendar still marked October 12th, circled in red ink as if grief needed an appointment. He kept their seaside photo on the wall, Helen's hair in the wind, Oliver holding a seashell to his ear. The intercom crackled. "Mr. Langford, it's Mr. Greaves from the Riverside Flats. One of the tenants, flat 3C, is 3 months behind. Do you want me to send legal notice?" Edward hesitated, then said quietly, "No, I'll deal with it myself." He didn't usually dirty his shoes with such things, but something inside him, a restlessness he hadn't felt in years, wanted to see the world beyond marble floors. An hour later, his black Jaguar stopped before Riverside Flats, a crumbling brick block near Battersea Bridge. The stairwell smelled of damp carpet and instant coffee. At 3C, children's music played faintly. "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." Helen had sung that every night. His hand trembled as he knocked. After a pause, a small voice asked, "Who's there?" "Edward Langford." "I'm the landlord." Locks clicked. The door opened to a little girl, barefoot, about 5, curls tangled, clutching a worn teddy bear. Her green eyes studied him. "Are you the man who'll make us leave?" Edward froze. "I'm here to talk to your mother about the rent." The child nodded solemnly, lifted the teddy and held it out. "I don't have money, but you can take Mr. Bear. He keeps people safe." Words deserted him. The bear was patched, one button eye missing, yet offered like a treasure. "Sophie," a woman's voice called. A young mother appeared, hair loosely tied, exhaustion under her eyes. "I told you not to open the door," Sophie whispered. "It's okay, Mama." He looked sad. Edward blinked. "I presume you're Mrs. Bennet?" "Clara Bennet," she said. "I know why you're here. I lost my job at the bookshop in July. I'm trying to find work." "How much is the arrear?" 3 months. Her voice held quiet shame. "I can catch up by month end. Please, just time." He nodded slowly. "You have until then?" Relief softened her face. Sophie hugged her bear. "Thank you, Mr. Langford." When he left, the wind lashed rain across the Thames, yet inside him something small had cracked open. A sound like life returning. The next morning, London's skyline looked like a bruise, steel, fog and drizzle. Edward Langford sat at his long dining table, untouched breakfast before him. His penthouse high above the Thames felt more like a museum than a home. He had never noticed how loud silence could be. He tried reading emails, contracts, reports, words blurred into nothing. Instead, his mind wandered back to her. The little girl in the doorway, clutching her bear with both hands as if it could hold the world together. Her honesty had pierced something solid and cold inside him. Before he realized what he was doing, he found himself standing in a small supermarket near Chelsea Bridge. He hadn't pushed a trolley in years. He filled it awkwardly, milk, rice, bread, fruit. Then, passing the freezer section, he saw dinosaur-shaped pizza and rainbow ice cream, Oliver's favorites. His throat tightened. He added them too. Rain was still falling when his Jaguar stopped again in front of Riverside Flats. He hesitated outside 3C, then knocked softly. The door opened. Clara Bennet stood there, startled. "Mr. Langford? Is something wrong?" He held up the bags in his hands. "I thought you might use these." She frowned. That's very kind, but it isn't necessary. It's not a gift, he said quietly. Think of it as an advance on the rent. For a moment she hesitated, torn between pride and exhaustion, then stepped aside. Come in. The apartment was tiny but spotless. The smell of instant coffee mixed with warmth. On the carpet, Sophie sat cross-legged, drawing with colored pencils. When she saw him, her face lit up. You came back. Edward smiled despite himself. I thought Mr. Bear might want to check on me. Clara busied herself unpacking the bags. This is too much, she murmured. The ice cream alone costs more than my week's food. Then call it an experiment, Edward said. Maybe sharing costs less than it seems. She looked up, unsure if he was joking. You're not what I expected. I'm not sure I am either, he replied. Sophie tugged her mother's sleeve. Mama, can we eat the dinosaur pizza tonight? Only if you say please, Clara said. Please, 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 Edward laughed softly. The sound surprised even him. He hadn't laughed in years. The walls were decorated with children's drawings, suns, houses, people with smiling faces. One showed a woman, a child, and a man with a hat. Underneath, written in uneven letters, my family. She draws all the time, Clara said, catching his gaze. It helps her stay calm. She says she'll be an artist, or a vet, or a princess. It changes daily. Edward nodded, a shadow in his eyes. My son used to say he'd be a firefighter, until he decided astronauts were cooler. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Clara's eyes softened, but she didn't ask. Sophie tilted her head. What do you do, Mr. Langford? I buy houses, he said, and rent them to people. That sounds boring. Sometimes it is. Mama says people are more important than houses. Edward met Clara's gaze. She's right. When he left, Sophie pressed her beer into his hands. Just for a bit, so he knows you'll come back. Edward knelt, returned the beer gently. I promise I won't forget him. Outside, for the first time in years, the air didn't feel cold. The following day unfolded like any other, or so Edward Langford told himself. The boardroom of Langford Estates gleamed with glass and chrome, a dozen executives waiting for direction. Yet as graphs and numbers flickered across the projector, Edward's eyes stayed unfocused. He couldn't stop thinking about that small flat in Battersea. The laughter, the smell of coffee, the dinosaur pizza. The memory had color, warmth, and noise. His office, by contrast, felt like a grave made of success. Mr. Langford? His assistant Judith broke through the silence. The investors' meeting has been postponed to 3. He nodded absently. Cancel it. Judith hesitated. Sir? Cancel everything today. He closed his laptop, stood and walked out before anyone could question him. By the time he reached Riverside Flats, the afternoon rain had turned to mist. Children played football in the courtyard, their laughter echoing between walls. Edward paused, watching them chase a muddy ball with pure joy. It struck him how long it had been since he had wanted to laugh for no reason. At 3C, he heard voices, Clara's and Sophie's. He knocked softly. When the door opened, Clara looked surprised but not alarmed. Mr. Langford, twice in 2 days? Should I worry about the rent or about you? He smiled faintly. Perhaps both. She laughed, a quick, nervous sound. I was just heading to a cafe nearby. They're hiring part-time waitresses. That sounds promising, he said. Then, almost without thinking, have you eaten? A bit of toast. That's not breakfast, he said, frowning automatically. Her smile widened. You sound like someone who cares. Maybe I do, he murmured, half to himself. Sophie appeared in the hallway barefoot, her dress creased from play. "Mr. Langford," she cried, running to him. "Mama says you helped us." "I think your mama helped herself," he said gently. "Sometimes we just need someone to listen." Sophie nodded seriously. "Then you should listen to Mr. Bear too. He says important things." Edward bent down. "If he speaks, I'll listen." While Clara gathered her bag, Edward's eyes drifted around the flat again. Every object told a story of trying. Second-hand furniture polished to shine, drawings covering cracks in the wall. He saw no luxury, yet he saw peace. "You both draw?" he asked. "She does," Clara said. "I pretend I can." "She isn't afraid to lose what she paints. Maybe I should learn from that." Edward nodded slowly. "Maybe we all should." As he walked back to his car, he realized something unusual. He felt lighter. Not happy, not yet, but lighter, as if some invisible weight had been set down. That night, he sat in his silent penthouse, looking at the photo of Helen and Oliver. "I don't know what I'm doing," he whispered into the dark, "but maybe it's the right thing." For the first time in years, he didn't dream of loss. He dreamed of rain, laughter, and a child's voice calling, "Please, Mr. Langford, come back tomorrow." 2 days passed. Edward tried to bury himself in work, meetings, numbers, the comforting rhythm of business. But nothing drowned out the echo of Sophie's laughter or Clara's calm voice saying, "Maybe I should learn from that." On the third morning, while London still dozed beneath a curtain of drizzle, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. "Mr. Langford, it's Clara Bennett." Her voice sounded different, lighter, more alive. "I just wanted to thank you," she said. "I got the job. The cafe near Queen's Road hired me." "That's wonderful," he said sincerely. "I knew they'd be lucky to have you." A small silence followed, warm but uncertain. "Also," she continued, "Sophie keeps asking if Mr. Langford and Mr. Bear will visit again. She thinks he misses you." Edward smiled without meaning to. "Well, we can't let Mr. Bear down, can we?" Later that afternoon, he parked again outside Riverside Flats, this time with less hesitation. He carried a shopping bag, bread, juice, and a new set of colored pencils. When Clara opened the door, she shook her head with a half smile. "You're a dangerous man, Mr. Langford." "Dangerous?" "Yes, you make kindness look effortless." He chuckled. "I assure you it's not." Sophie ran in, waving a paper. "I drew you again." The picture showed a tall man in a suit beside a girl holding a teddy. "That's you and me," she said proudly. "And Mr. Bear, he's smiling now." Edward blinked back something soft in his chest. "It's beautiful, Sophie. I even look happy." "That's because you are," she said simply. Clara watched them with a quiet tenderness she tried to hide. "She doesn't say that about everyone," she murmured. They sat for tea. The flat smelled faintly of strawberries. Clara had been making jam. "I traded a neighbor for a basket of berries," she explained, "made enough to last a week." He smiled. "So you turn little things into more. That's a gift." "Or just survival," she said softly. For a while they spoke of ordinary things, her new job, Sophie's drawings, the rain that never seemed to stop. When he stood to leave, Clara walked him to the door. "You don't have to keep doing this," she said gently. "I know," he replied, "but I want to." Sophie ran up, tugging at his sleeve. "You'll come back?" He nodded. "Mr. Bear would be cross if I didn't." Outside, London was wrapped in gold mist. He stood by his car for a long moment, unable to explain why leaving felt like the hardest thing he'd done all week. That evening, Judith, his assistant, called about a charity gala. His sister expected him there. "Tell her I'm busy," he said. With what, sir? He looked out at the glowing city and smiled faintly. With something that finally matters. Saturday evening came quietly, wrapped in a drizzle that turned the London streets into rivers of amber light. Edward Langford stood in the hallway of Riverside Flats, holding a bouquet of white lilies and a bottle of wine. He had negotiated billion-pound contracts without blinking, but now, facing a narrow door on the third floor, his pulse betrayed him. The door opened. Clara Bennett stood there in a simple blue dress, her hair loosely pinned. The faint scent of roasted vegetables drifted through the flat. "You're right on time," she said with a smile that reached her eyes. "I couldn't risk disappointing Mr. Bear," he replied. She laughed softly. "Come in then." The table was set simply: 2 plates, a candle, a vase with a single daisy. Sophie was already sitting, legs swinging under the chair. "I helped with dinner," she declared proudly. "I tested the carrots to make sure they weren't poison." Clara rolled her eyes. "She ate half of them before I could cook." Edward laughed. A warm, unguarded sound. "I admire your dedication, young lady." Dinner was modest but rich in something no restaurant could serve: comfort. Between stories about Sophie's school and tales from Edward's childhood, laughter came easily. He told them about an elderly neighbor who once tried to wash her cat in a washing machine. Sophie burst into uncontrollable giggles. Even Clara hid her face to keep from laughing too loudly. "I never knew you had a sense of humor, Mr. Langford," she teased. "Neither did I," he admitted. "Perhaps I just forgot." After the meal, Sophie ran off and returned with a small bundle wrapped in a napkin. "I made you something," she said shyly. Inside lay a small handmade teddy bear. Its stitches were uneven, its button eyes mismatched, but it was clearly made with care. "He's called Mr. Bear too," she explained. "So you're never alone." Edward couldn't speak. He looked at the tiny bear, then at Sophie's proud smile, and something inside him, frozen for years, melted. Clara turned away for a second, wiping her eyes. "You're too kind, sweetheart," she whispered. "Kind is good, isn't it?" Sophie asked. Edward managed a whisper. "It's the best thing to be." Later, after Sophie had gone to bed, Clara and Edward sat in the quiet glow of the candle. "She's special," he said softly. "She reminds me who I want to be," Clara replied. "And who is that?" "Someone who doesn't give up." She looked down, fingers twisting nervously. "I used to dream of a simple life, but that disappeared when her father left." Edward's face darkened. "He left you alone?" She nodded. "No word, no money. Just gone." "He didn't know what he lost," Edward said quietly. Before she could answer, a small sound came from Sophie's room, a whimper in her sleep. Clara rose. "She dreams sometimes that people go away." Edward's chest tightened. "Does she dream that I go too?" "She says you fly to the sky and leave Mr. Bear too behind." He smiled sadly. "Then I suppose I'd better stay so she can sleep." The rain outside deepened into a steady rhythm. Clara stood by the doorway, eyes soft but wary. "You're changing things, Mr. Langford," she said quietly. "Maybe it's time someone did," he answered. The peace of that evening lingered like a soft perfume long after Edward left. For the first time in years, he felt not empty, but anchored. To a place, to voices, to laughter that wasn't his own. But peace, he would soon learn, is fragile. It happened a week later. Edward had just finished a meeting when his phone buzzed. Clara's name appeared. He smiled and answered quickly. "Clara?" Her voice trembled. "He's here." "Who?" "Aaron, Sophie's father." When Edward reached Riverside Flats, rain lashed the bricks like fists. From the hallway he heard shouting, low, bitter, male. "You replaced me with that rich man?" a voice barked. "You left us, Aaron." Clara's voice quivered but stood firm. 3 years, no word. You don't get to walk in and act like a hero. Edward stepped inside. That's enough. Aaron turned. His face was pale, unshaven, eyes red from drink. Well, well. The landlord. His lips curled. The savior. Did you buy yourself a family, Mr. Langford? Get out, Edward said calmly. Aaron's laugh was dry and dangerous. Or what? You'll write me an eviction notice? Then he shoved Clara's shoulder. Sophie screamed from her room. Edward's restraint broke. He grabbed Aaron by the arm, slammed him against the wall. If you touch her again, he hissed, you'll regret it. Aaron sneered but didn't fight back. Outside, police sirens wailed closer. The neighbors must have called. Minutes later, 2 officers escorted Aaron out, still cursing. As the door closed behind them, Clara collapsed onto the sofa, trembling. Edward knelt beside her. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Tears spilled anyway. I didn't want you to get involved. It's not your fault. I thought he'd changed. Edward looked toward the hallway where Sophie stood clutching Mr. Bear, her small face pale and frightened. He opened his arms. She ran to him without hesitation. It's over, he whispered. He can't hurt you anymore. But deep down, he knew it wasn't truly over. Men like Aaron didn't just vanish. They circled back, wearing apologies like masks. For 2 days, Clara stayed silent, avoiding calls. Then Edward's solicitor rang. Mr. Langford, there's a legal notice. The man, Aaron Carter, is filing for custody. Edward's knuckles tightened on the phone. On what grounds? He claims she's unfit, that she's living off your charity. Edward's voice hardened. We'll fight it. That evening, he went to Clara's flat. She opened the door slowly, her face drained. He's trying to take her, she whispered. He says I'm not enough. Edward stepped closer, eyes steady. He won't win. Not while I'm here. Why? She asked, her voice small. Why are you doing this? He exhaled shakily. Because I love you both. The words hung between them, real and raw. Clara stared at him as if she'd forgotten how to breathe. You can't just say that, she murmured. I already did, he said softly, and I won't take it back. Outside, thunder rolled over the Thames. The calm was gone, but something stronger had taken its place. The courtroom was cold, too bright, too still, the kind of place where every truth had to bleed before it could breathe. Clara sat beside Edward, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She didn't speak. She only stared at the floor, waiting for the verdict that could take her daughter away. Across the room, Aaron Carter looked freshly scrubbed, wearing a grey suit and a hollow smile. He'd traded whiskey for aftershave, anger for pity. But Edward could see it. The tremor in his jaw, the deceit hiding behind polished shoes. When the judge entered, the sound of shuffling papers echoed like thunder. Aaron's lawyer stood first. My client acknowledges past mistakes, he said smoothly. But he has changed. He only wishes to be a father again. Aaron nodded with practiced humility. I just want Sophie to know I love her. His voice cracked perfectly on cue. Edward's solicitor, Miss Hollis, rose next, her tone precise as a blade. Your Honor, Mr. Carter paid no support for 3 years, ignored court notices, and was arrested for assault less than 4 months ago. She placed a folder on the bench. We have records and witnesses to confirm this. Aaron laughed bitterly. That's all old news. I'm a new man now. Edward's voice, when it came, was calm but firm. And yet the police still had to pull you off Clara's floor. Aaron turned, fury flashing for a heartbeat. You think money makes you her father? Edward's reply was quiet. No? I was there when you weren't. The judge raised a hand. Enough! Witnesses were called. Clara's neighbor, Sophie's teacher, Even the elderly doorman who had seen Edward bring groceries during the cold months. Each painted the same picture: a mother who fought to give her child peace, and a man who'd helped without ever asking for credit. When the last witness stepped down, the judge's eyes softened, but the room remained tense. Then Miss Hollis spoke again. "Your Honor," the child herself asked to say a few words. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Sophie was led in, her little hand clutching a sheet of colored paper. Her legs trembled, but her chin lifted bravely. The judge smiled gently. "What have you drawn, Sophie?" "My family," she said quietly. She held up the picture. 3 figures under a yellow sun. "That's me, that's Mummy, and that's Mr. Langford." The judge hesitated. "And your father?" Sophie looked down, then spoke with the plain wisdom only a child could have. "He went away, but Mr. Langford stays. Real daddies don't leave." The courtroom fell utterly silent. Clara's breath caught. Even the judge looked away for a moment, clearing his throat. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but warm. "The court grants full custody to the mother. No visitation rights to Mr. Carter." Aaron slumped in his chair, defeated. Clara covered her face and wept silently. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds as if the city itself had been waiting to exhale. Sophie reached for Edward's hand. "Can we go home now, Daddy Langford?" He swallowed the ache in his throat and smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. Let's go home." A year had passed. Time hadn't erased the pain. It had simply planted new roots where sorrow once grew. The old riverside flats were gone from their lives now. Edward, Clara, and Sophie lived in a white cottage just outside Guildford, where the air smelled of rain and freshly cut grass. In the garden, rows of sunflowers stretched toward the sky. Sophie's idea. She said they always look happy, Clara often told visitors. And she was right. The flowers turned their faces to the sun, the way Sophie turned hers to laughter. The mornings began with the sound of a kettle and the small thud of Sophie's feet racing down the stairs. Edward would be at the table, newspaper in hand, pretending to read while waiting for her to burst in. "Daddy Langford, guess what? My drawing got picked for the school exhibition." "Another masterpiece," he teased. She nodded proudly. "It's us. Look. Mummy, you, me and Mr. Bear too, under the sunflowers." Clara, pouring tea, smiled softly. "Our little artist. You see what happens when you give her colored pencils instead of screens." Edward looked at the two of them. The woman who taught him how to feel again, and the child who'd reminded him what love meant. He thought of that first day, the rain, the tiny flat, the girl with her teddy bear offering it like treasure. How far they had come from that doorstep. The wedding had been simple. No champagne towers, no diamonds, no orchestra. Just vows whispered under a tree. And Sophie dropping flower petals down the aisle, her giggles mixing with birdsong. When the officiant asked Clara if she wished to marry Edward Langford, she'd said yes through quiet tears. Sophie had clapped her hands and shouted, "Now we're a real family!" And for the first time, Edward truly believed it. Months later, they founded the New Roots Foundation, a charity helping families at risk of losing their homes. "Sometimes people just need someone to listen," Clara said during a television interview, her voice calm, certain. Edward watched from behind the camera, filled with the quiet pride of a man who finally built something that mattered. That summer, they celebrated Sophie's 8th birthday in the garden. Children chased bubbles through the sunlight while Clara prepared lemonade. Edward grilled sausages and tried to keep the smoke away from the cake. Sophie ran barefoot through the grass, her laughter bright as wind chimes. "Daddy Langford," she called, holding up her old teddy bear. Catch me if you can. He chased her across the lawn until both of them fell into the soft earth, laughing until their ribs hurt. When evening came, fireflies blinked among the sunflowers. Clara leaned against his shoulder. "Do you ever think about before?" she whispered. "Only to see how far we've come," he said. Sophie yawned, curling between them. "Mummy, Daddy Langford, I love you." He kissed her forehead. "We love you too, my brave girl." As the night settled over the garden, Edward watched the flowers sway in the breeze and understood something simple, something true. Happiness was never about wealth or success. It was about staying when leaving would be easier. It was about the promise behind a child's words. Real fathers don't leave. And this time, he never would. End of story. "Please don't evict us." She offered her teddy, and he remembered what love meant